examining 4 centuries of Celtic-Roman relations, the eventual subjugation of the Celtic people by Rome, and the events leading up to Boudica's rebellion. Now, Boudica seems to have been a good military commander, with some control over the army of Celtic tribes that she led in the rebellion. Now, of course, there's hundreds of independent and rather undisciplined war bands, each under their own chieftain, who are rather intolerant of authority. The Celtic warrior queen's army must have been difficult to handle. Essentially a disorderly mob, advancing in the manner of all tribal armies, scouring the countryside for plunder, with little or no thought for the many dangers that might lie ahead. The war chariots and the Celtic cavalry would have been in the front, while at the rear thousands of wagons, carts, pack ponies, donkeys, and herds of cattle were trailing behind. It was a Celtic tribal habit to take along their possessions with them when they went to war. Now, a large percentage of her army would owe Queen Boudica no personal alliance or allegiance, but were actually tagging along for loot, as well as a strong desire to kill all the Romans they see. Boudica travels in a conspicuously red war chariot drawn by 2 white horses. The warrior queen wears a yellow cloak and golden ornaments to match her golden hair, which flows around her shoulders. Her 2 daughters, Hunia and Lanosia, who were repeatedly raped by the Romans, also travel with her in the chariot. The Celts will fight courageously, but without discipline and control, lacking order or formation. Dense masses of warriors quickly descend on the undefended town of Colchester, then known as Columdunum, and basically slaughter every Roman in sight. The Roman colony of Colchester was well provided with public buildings, a council chamber and theater, plus a huge temple to the imperial cult of the emperor. Now, the temple to the Celts is symbolic of their servitude, and was a particular object of their hatred. Now, the 19th Roman Legion is marching from London, to quell the revolt, but is overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The legate of the 9th Legion, Batilius Cyrillus, was in fact the 19th Legion, was a mercurial individual who managed to escape many times from military disaster. His infantry is cut to pieces, but he vamooses with only his cavalry and takes shelter behind the defenses of his base command. This is known as the Vextilian Fortress. Written records from the time in Latin show a desperate attempt by the remnants of the 19th Legion to put themselves into a position of defense. Now, the governor, the provincial procurator, is now terrified by the intensity of the hatred directed against him, and quickly flees to Gaul. He would later commit suicide, deservedly so. Meanwhile, General Paulinus makes for London with all speed, without the bulk of his troops, and plans on defending the settlement till the news of Boudica's victory arrives. General Paulinus then decides to regroup elsewhere and basically sacrifices one town in order to save the overall situation. Paulinus marches the rest of his main force, 10,000 men, from the 14th and 20th Legions, and becomes engaged with the Celts in North Wales before he can return and intervene. Boudica's army quickly destroys London, slaughters all its inhabitants, and burns it to the ground. The proficient way in which she uses her chariots and cavalry in a wheeling-dealing hit-and-run style indicates at least a notion of her forces are under her control. There's a modicum of discipline and training. Gerald Paulinus and his 2 legions are greatly outnumbered, but stand their ground on a carefully chosen ridge. This ridge features unturnable flanks near Stanez. The triumphant Celts now pour forward to destroy the last Roman force that could oppose them. They advance in no set pattern, divisions without order and formation. The entire Celtic army bubbles and rides to a background of deep-throated, bellowing war horns, battle cries, and war chants that is accompanied by the neighing of horses and the barking of huge hunting hounds. The Iceni tribe, the largest tribe, forms the center of the line. The Cartani are on the right. The Catuvaloni are on the left. There's other tribes involved, as well as the Travantes, the Arabantes, as well as many others. The better armed warriors are in the front of the line, forming a broad band of multicolored cloaks, pointy helmets, and brightly enameled shields. The Celts have the superior stature and physique and are much taller than the Romans. The average Celt is well over 6 feet, with blue eyes, beards, and long tawny hair. The average Roman is between 5'2" and 5'4". So the Celts tower over their Roman enemies. This height gives the Celts a false sense of confidence. And at first sight, it's hard for the Celts to believe that they will not defeat the much smaller Romans. The Celtic warriors do not consider the training system and centuries of experience that makes the Romans a disciplined and effective fighting force. Now, the ground in front of the Roman position is soft and sandy and easily turns to mud and mire. The Celts' cavalry and war chariots are reduced to a labored walking pace and have jammed themselves into a heaving mass. Now, the Roman legionnaires form a 1,500-yard concentric line. They are 6 deep, with the infantry pushed forward by the weight of the man behind them. The Roman cavalry is on the wings, and the only reserve troops available to the Romans are the imperial bodyguard cohort that is in the rear. The Celts pour onto. They take the battlefield like a floodwater through a broken dike. They fling themselves in a headlong charge that resembles a stampede of wild animals. They attack en masse and do not break easily, but they possess no tactical knowledge that permits maneuvering, and they just simply surge forward. The 2 Roman legions, swords held low and shields head high, go forward down the slope in a steady, controlled trot. At about 20 paces, the Romans throw their pila, which are piked javelins, then form a type of wedge, an ideal battle formation, and are now deep in the Celtic warrior ranks. The Romans bring the Celtic warrior charge to a standstill. The Celts are caught in the Roman V formation between the wedges and are forced to fight on 2 fronts. The Roman wedge allows for no more than 1,000 Celts to engage the same number of Romans. The Romans in this battle formation are no longer outnumbered. The Romans are regularly relieved by fresh troops. They fight in stages. A Roman soldier would fight for no more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time. And as the battle progressed, the next one in the 6-deep line would take his place. So you have fresh Roman soldiers every 10 or 15 minutes in the battle. The Celts, of course, get no relief. The result of the battle is inevitable. The Celts begin to give way, and the Roman wedges are flattened. The Roman battle line once again becomes a straight line. And at exactly the right moment, the cavalry charge down the slopes to smash the Celts' flanks. The Celtic warriors become a dissolving flood of flesh, and in a dramatic heave, turn into a rabble and flee in all directions. They are trapped, bounded by the Romans at one end, and bounded by a barrier of their own carts and wagons at the other end. This battle turns into a slaughter. 100,000 Celtic warriors die on this killing ground, and, well, there's only 400 Roman dead or wounded. Now, there's a historical debate. Did Queen Boudica die in the battle? Or did she die of illness soon afterwards? Or did she commit suicide by poison? We don't really know for sure. But the suicide scenario seems the most likely, because if Queen Boudica had been captured by the Romans, the Celtic warrior queen would have been marched up and down the city of Rome, bound in golden chains, in a triumph celebration. Now, the triumph would always end. This festival, this triumph festival, would always end with the one that is bound in chains being ritually slaughtered. First they're humiliated in front of the Roman people, then they're strangled. So Queen Boudica probably knows this, and probably would have chosen suicide over being brought back to Rome. Now, the fate of her two daughters, Henia and Lanusia, is also in question. They basically disappear from history. They may have died in battle, they may have poisoned themselves, or they may have lived out their lives in obscurity. We don't really know. The Celtic warrior hordes, being hacked to pieces by the outnumbered Roman army, becomes a type of scarifying experience, and it left deep wounds on the hearts, minds, and souls of the Celtic Britons. The Romans, who punish rebellion with a severe gusto, were now bent on vengeance and sweep through the Celtic lands of the hostile tribes and destroy everything in sight. They show no mercy. They kill men, they kill women, they kill children, they kill animals, and destroy the crops. It takes several generations before the defeated Celts recover and eventually become a peaceful, prosperous, and pacified Roman province, Britannia. The Celts and the Romans would, over the course of the next several centuries, fuse into one people, the Celto-Romano. With that thought, we're going to take